So you want to become a software engineer. So you watch all of the coding interview recordings on YouTube. I mean, hey, maybe you've watched every single video out there on how to solve every interview problem ever. Well, listen up. In today's video, I'm going to share 8 personal tips to nail every single one of your coding interviews. Most importantly, I'm going to tell you stuff that actually works if you put in the work. And no, I'm not going to tell you to go enroll in a software bootcamp where there's a 2-month hack to go from 0 to 100. Getting hired takes dedication. It's a craft, one of storytelling, skill mastery, and communication. So if you're ready, let's get started with the first tip, which is know what you're getting evaluated on. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you know what's on the rubric of coding interview evaluations? That is, do you know what skills the interviews are testing you on? A lot of people think that these interviews are there for companies to only see how well you can code. I mean, the truth is, that's only one of the 4 things that they test you on. So in most, if not all of your interviews, you'll be judged on your ability to problem solve, code, debug/test, and communicate. With problem solving, they want to see how well you're able to simplify a complex problem by breaking them down into smaller parts and making smart assumptions that are well justified. Say you get hired at TikTok or YouTube, and they're looking at you to help make videos load faster on people's phones. This is a problem that you can't just solve by knowing the answers to 100 different LeetCode hard problems. You'll have to understand entire architectures of these programs, and then find the smallest bottlenecks, and then, and only then, propose solutions that will guarantee faster loading experiences for people's phones. Now, don't get me wrong, you still need to know how to code. However, I compare it to getting good grades in school. They're important, and you can't pass the test in the first place without knowing how to code. But you also need to demonstrate your ability to thoroughly test your own code. If you become a software engineer, if you go work at a tech company, I guarantee you, 8 out of the 10 projects that you get to work on, you will have to debug and test some ugly lines of code left behind by someone. You're gonna have to fix errors and layers of messy code written by someone in the past who only left you with an inline comment that says, "to do." So it's no wonder that interviewers are looking out for candidates who pay a lot of attention to details and people who are willing to get to the bottom of the messiest entanglements. Last but not least, it doesn't matter how well you can do any of these things if you can't communicate to your interviewer what you're thinking about and why throughout the interview. In my day-to-day, I spend a lot of time communicating with teammates, stakeholders, and people from different teams. As you get more and more senior as an engineer, you're expected extreme proficiency in communication and providing clarity to a lot of different people, some technical, some non-technical, some younger, some older, you name it. So keep these 4 axes in mind on which you'll be evaluated on during your interviews throughout the rest of the video. And by the end, the interviewer should walk away from the interview wanting to work with you. Now, step number 2 is to really know your stuff. The data structures and algorithms, the syntax of the programming language that you choose, the libraries, the useful imports, etc., etc. Knowing this stuff front to back is really building your core skill set as a software engineer. You're really going to have a tough time convincing people that you can do the job without knowing any of this. And there are a million resources online and offline about how to master any of these skills related to coding. So I won't reinvent the wheel here. Find the videos and books you like, grind it out. There's no skipping the line here. Now listen, if the first 2 tips were about preparing and knowing what's ahead of you, these next few tips will be about being as brilliant and communicative as you can during the interview itself. Tip number 3 is to start every technical question by asking good, clarifying questions. As I mentioned before, in software engineering, you need to start solving problems with the right assumptions. Asking clarifying questions is doing that, but at the scale of an interview. When the interviewer gives you the problem, start by asking questions to fully understand what you're being asked to solve. For example, if they give you a problem on arrays, ask about the data types of the elements inside the array, or the min-max size of the arrays. All these things will shape how you will approach the problem. Even if you think you've solved the same problem in a practice setting before, it's in your best interest to make sure you have all the assumptions laid out. Clearly communicate to the interviewers, and let me emphasize this, clearly communicate your ability to spot out details and embrace ambiguity with confidence and curiosity. And this is a great way to invite the interviewer into your thinking process. Get used to thinking out loud and sounding dumb or stuck at times, because it's a heck of a lot better than sitting in silence when you're stuck, going down a rabbit hole of anxiety and feeling like you're stuck while the interviewer has no idea what you're stuck with. So again, let the interviewer hear your thinking process. Let them take a role in your problem-solving session. So after you've really understood the question, for this next tip, walk through example inputs and outputs without code. This heavily leans in to you signaling to the interviewer that you're extremely thorough, that you can test things and debug things and hypothesize expected outcomes without writing code. On the job, I'm always asked to estimate the size of the problem or to hypothesize outcomes of projects, meaning I need to fully understand the problem at stake. Do exactly that during the interview. Create edge cases you can think of, the arrays with no elements, the arrays with 1,000,000 elements, the nulls, the zeros, all of them. You're going to look so much better if you catch your own mistake not in the middle of writing code on a whiteboard, where you can so easily panic because you totally missed out on some important pieces of information. Walking through examples also brings the interviewer a step closer to you. You're really trying to maintain a smooth line of communication between you and the interviewer. Doing all of this without an explicit solution in mind will prevent you from falling into traps or optimization paralysis while keeping you malleable to different solutions and approaches. Okay, next tip, come up with an outline of your solution. Here, we can finally start proposing a solution to the problem. And I emphasize an outline, not a fully implemented code solution. I personally like using pseudocode at this stage because it gives the interviewer a very clear view of my thinking process. You might be wondering, well, isn't it better to just write the most optimal solution to solve the problem, given that I only have 30 minutes to solve the problem? Actually, I found that writing pseudocode saves more time than implementing the solution directly. It allows me to catch easy mistakes that I otherwise would have made. Also, you get to simplify and organize your solution. This is so underrated because simplified and organized solutions make it so easy for the interviewer to understand what you're doing. Having this organized skeleton of pseudocode makes it possible so that you and the interviewer are on the same page. It's also an opportunity to show your proficiency in methodical problem solving and clean code by writing pseudocode helper functions. At this point, you can also mention if you think you can make different optimizations to your solution. This way, you also save so much time on not coding a slower or a more spacious solution. For good measure, you should directly ask your interviewer if you're good to start writing code to fill in your outline. After you finish the outline and get the green light from the interviewer to start writing code, tip number 6, fill in your solution step by step. Please stay organized and do your best to show your professionalism at this stage. Giving your variables easy to understand names is going to go a really long way. Also, your outline should be enough for the interviewer to know what you're doing on the board. The way that I look at it, this should really be the easiest part, where it comes to you naturally after having done so much practice. Done the heavy lifting of problem solving, it's time to paint your picture on the canvas and sign it off. Interviewers will be so impressed as you fill in your functions in just one scan because you've already outlined your functions. I guarantee you, doing all that work to this point will actually save you more time getting from start to code complete. Now, just when you thought you finished solving the problem, tip number 7, sanity check your solution by running examples through your code. Be extra proactive about debugging and testing here. As soon as you finish implementing code, you don't want to let the interviewers prompt you to test your own code. Do it immediately. Ask them, hey, is it all right if I run some examples through my solution to make sure that I didn't forget anything? Damn, you're gonna look professional and trustworthy. Who wouldn't want to work with you? The irresistible candidate who tests his or her code as soon as they finish writing it. After all that, tip number 8, before they prompt you again, mention the time and space complexity. It's your job to figure out how fast and how spacious your solution is. This is also an excellent opportunity to mention any optimizations that you would make. So ladies and gentlemen, there are the 8 tips that I would give you for you to nail every single one of your coding interviews. I want you to understand that this is going to be a process. And the more time and effort you put into mastering each step, the more you will stand out as an excellent candidate and the higher the chances it'll be for you to get hired. For everyone who made it to the end, here's a bonus tip. Find a buddy or two to do mock interviews with. Practicing to communicate technical concepts to another person in the room is so different from typing away on LeetCode. and it will take you so far. You're gonna get less and less nervous and more confident the more mock interviews that you have under your belt. So focus on each of these steps one at a time. This is a process, this is a journey. Just make the first step. And on that note, I'm gonna be rooting for you. I'll keep making content to help you get your dream job. See you in the next video.